Hello and welcome to the Mobile Overview Report, the Mover Report by Scientia Mobile. Every quarter, we publish a report on the latest mobile usage trends. This quarter, we will be looking at the third quarter of 2018. That would be July 2018 through September 2018. And we also host a webinar, this webinar, to walk you through some of the highlights of that report. Today, the webinar will be hosted by myself, Ken Jones. I am the Vice President of Marketing at Scientia Mobile. I've worked in telecommunications for over 15 years, and I've consulted with some of the largest mobile operators around the world. I've worked with startups in fixed mobile convergence and deep packet inspection, and I've been deeply involved with the analytics of network infrastructure and mobile device industries. And today, our co-moderator is Jonan Seteras. Am I close this time?
Yeah, well, it was closer last time, actually. Jonan Seteras, that's how it's pronounced. It's a Norwegian name, obviously, then. I am a Norwegian. I am Vice President of Products and Innovation in Scientia Mobile. Similarly to Ken, my career has been mainly spent in the telco industry and also the mobile web industry.
Thank you. So our agenda for today is we'll spend about 5 minutes talking about device intelligence, giving you a quick overview of how device intelligence and device detection can be used by various parts of the web industry and the mobile network. Then we'll get into the details of the Mobile Overview Report. We'll spend about 20 minutes talking about the Apple iPhone XS and the XS Max launch. We'll take also a look at the Samsung Galaxy Note 9 launch that was about a month before that. And then we'll look at image optimization trends. We have some new developments that are going on as you can improve the performance of your website by translating GIF files to MP4 or WebP files. And we'll take a look at some of the process for doing that and the results. Then we'll look at the dual SIM or multi-SIM phone usage around the world. This is a type of phone that is more and more being offered by manufacturers around the world. And we'll take a look at where they're popular and what you can do to detect them. Our geographic spotlight this Mover report is on South Korea. We'll dig into some of the usage trends that we see in South Korea and compare them to those in the United States. Then finally, we'll take a look at some of the standard Mover reports and highlight, for example, the top smartphones, top tablets, and the operating systems that are getting the most use around the world. We'll leave a little time for questions at the end, so if you have any, feel free to type them into the console for the webinar. So a quick explanation of how we define device detection. Device detection is the process of identifying the type of device that is coming to your website and also responding back with the capabilities of that device. Does the device have a certain screen size? Is it using a certain operating system? This is helpful for addressing a number of problems in the mobile usage area. So typically a website might have problems with poor mobile user experience. With device detection, you can optimize the mobile experience to a particular device. You can target the user experience and user interface that way with either navigation or the way the page is laid out. And then also, if you're in the advertising field, you can target certain types of devices or the device's capabilities with advertisements that are more suited to that type of device. You have slow loading images. This is a big problem for a lot of websites. The images that are being sent down to mobile devices tend to be larger than they need to be. And with device detection integrated into a content delivery network, you can develop what we call an adaptive image CDN that right sizes the image, converts it to the images to a file format that's appropriate for the device and its browser, and accelerates the user experience quite dramatically. Then finally, the problem is the need for mobile measurements. So much of the browsing that happens in the world today comes from smartphones or tablets or mobile devices, smart TVs, game consoles. And more enterprises are looking to measure this so that they can get more results, better results out of the user interface that they have. And these problems can cost millions in lost sales. So device detection is a great way to address this. And here we provide a quick overview of some of the device capabilities that you can learn. We're looking at the advertising industry here, but for example, the brand name, the model of the device is important, but you can also tell things about the form factor. Is it a smartphone? Is it a tablet? The operating system version, is it version 12 of iOS? The resolution of the screen. A whole host of capabilities are available to people who use device detection. Wurfel, which is the product that Sentia Mobile provides, has over 500 device capabilities available to them. So we've used that device detection capabilities in the mobile overview report. And today what we're going to do is walk through some analysis we've done of various mobile trends. So the first one we're going to look at is the launch of the premium phones by Samsung and Apple. Looking at Samsung's most recent release, in August, we had on August 4th to be specific, the Samsung Galaxy 9 started to ship. The Samsung Galaxy Note 9 is the latest in what I'll call the large format smartphones that are getting more and more popular. And by the end of September, so a little over a month, the percentage of all the smartphone traffic that we see and measure, the Samsung Galaxy 9 represented 0.24% of that smartphone traffic. So it's starting to tick up. It's still a pretty small percentage. And when you compare it to some of the other Samsung Galaxies that are out there, the Samsung Galaxy S8 is still the most popular Samsung premium smartphone, and it has 2.17%. You can see, actually, it's kind of interesting. You see a lot of different. We only listed the most recent Samsung Galaxy S versions that are out there. There are a whole host of other Samsung models that are available. But these are probably the most important and most popular. The other thing that we looked at was the newly launched Apple iPhone XS and XS Max. These were starting to ship on September 21st. There's actually a third phone, the XR, that is scheduled to come out, but it has not shipped yet, so we're not really reporting on it. By the end of September, even though it was a pretty short measurement time, only perhaps 2 weeks, the iPhone XS and XS Max started to show up on our radar in terms of measurements. And in fact, It's a figure that's pretty comparable to the Note 9 that launched a month before that. So the XS Max had 0.22% of all smartphone traffic, and the Apple iPhone XS had 0.17%. The most popular phone in the world right now is the Apple iPhone 7, and it has 5.7% of the world smartphone traffic. And so this is interesting. One thing that I wanted to point out, Jon Arne, taking 3 years back, what do you think the world's most popular phone was back in 2015?
iPhone 6s.
Close. It was the iPhone 6,
Oh,
and it had 12% of the smartphone usage. Now, the reason I bring that up is when you look at what's happened here, it used to be that Apple would release a model and it was a singular model. Now they're releasing 3 models at a time, essentially. In this latest one, the iPhone XS, the XS Max, and the XR that will be coming out. And I bring that out because this just, even amongst the blockbuster phones, we're seeing more and more fragmentation. They're targeting the devices down to the preferences of different buyers. Do you want a solid iPhone, or do you want the larger format, or do you want to pay extra for the more technologically advanced and glamorous iPhone X or XR in that case? And what you've seen is that even amongst the blockbuster phones that used to break the 10% mark, nowadays the world's most popular phone really only has like 5, 6, 7% of the market. In certain countries, you might see certain phones be more popular. In fact, we'll talk about that in South Korea. But what I'm really pointing out here is the increase in fragmentation that we have amongst the devices, even amongst the blockbuster devices. So moving on to image optimization, what we want to talk about here is the GIF format and how it can be further optimized and produce more efficient video formats. Let's take a quick look at the most popular image formats on the internet. Jon Arne, do you want to walk us through this?
sure, I can do that. Yeah, so we wanted to see or check what can be done with the GIFs or GIFs on the web. GIF is probably the first killer application of the web back in the days, where you could actually show small videos or animations on your website. And now, decades later, GIF is still sort of a unique format to what it's capable of. So it's still in use, mainly for small icons, maybe, and short animations. Yeah, this pie chart shows that obviously JPEG and PNG are the huge or the biggest, most popular image formats here. But when counting requests or the number of images on a website, GIF is still at 26%, which is kind of interesting. But if you compare this to the payload, actual bytes served by these requests, GIF is only 8%, which suggests that GIFs are small images, icons, or lightweight images, maybe also transparent.
Mm-hmm.
And if you move to the next slide, with Image Engine, latest fashion of Image Engine, we are now supporting automatic automatic transcoding of GIF images to either MP4 or WebP. And this is a fairly new thing, supported by major web browsers. Obviously, the WebP format has been around for a while, well supported in the Google space. But since iOS 12 and Safari 12, and a little bit before that for the Macs from Safari 11.1, MP4 was supported in image tags, regular image tags. So you didn't, in order to display the video, MP4 video, you don't have to mess around with video tags or JavaScript hacks to make the video show. You can simply include the MP4 video file inside the image tag, which pretty much replaces the need of a GIF.
GIF animations, yeah. I've always been I've always been intrigued by the fact that the GIF animations even exist today. It seems like such an inefficient format for these things, but that's the way it is. But an image CDN can change that.
Exactly. And this chart here shows how inefficient really the GIF is for most of the things on the web today, to be honest. With Image Engine and automatic optimization or adaptation of the GIFs, we can save close to 60% of the payload. And of course, MP4 doesn't support transparency and things like this, but this is of course baked into the Image Engine CDN to detect whether a GIF has transparency, and if it has, it will not be converted to any format than any other format. It will just be optimized to the regular way. And on the next slide, they look pretty similar, these two, but this now we're comparing the median size of these three different file formats, and it's pretty much the same conclusion here. MP4 and WebP is pretty much outperforming GIF. They're performing fairly stable to each other, MP4 versus WebP, but we see here that WebP is performing slightly better than MP4. And the reason for this is probably because the GIFs that were input into this test are small images, icon images, where the P is more efficient than MP4, because MP4 is a fully blown video format. So for larger, longer GIF animations, like the funny ones you'll find online and on Facebook, MP4 is definitely the better choice.
Right. So we just looking forward, what do you anticipate in terms of the lifespan of a GIF these days? Do we expect to see GIFs go away, or do we think that GIFs will just still exist, but people might figure out how to use a image CDN to deliver them more effectively?
Yeah, I thought GIFs were going away for a long time ago, but they're still around, and they have this certain specific features that makes them useful, and it's all the browsers have support for GIF. Many of the image editing or even video editing tools have support for GIF. So I definitely think they will be around for still a while, and. If you look at some of the big players on the web, like Facebook and Twitter and those guys, these guys, you can upload or publish a GIF there, but it is actually converted to an MP4 or some other formats. But in those cases, I mentioned JavaScript hacks and things like this. In those cases, this is handled by tons of JavaScripts. But with Image Engine, we're able to do this server-side real-time on demand. So I definitely think that's the way forward.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Okay. Let's move on to multi-SIM support. So, what is it? Well, let's start with what is a SIM card? Some people might not actually know that. So, a SIM card is that little uh, digital card that gets inserted into a mobile phone every time you purchase one. Or you can transfer one from your old account into, or your old phone into a new phone. What the purpose of that little chip is to authenticate with the mobile network and let that network know that you are a subscriber of the network. In certain cases, people might want to have a account with on two different networks. So I might have an account with Verizon. I might have an account with T-Mobile. I'd have two different SIM cards. And instead of swapping them in and out when I'm traveling, that's one reason why a lot of people have multiple SIM cards. If they're international travelers, they might be making use of better rates on certain networks. And the but instead of doing the swapping them in or out manually, you can insert them into a dual SIM or a multi-SIM device and let the phone manage for you which network you want to select and use. So that's what we're talking about here. And we've identified a number of different profiles of the usage around the world. So the first one here is looking at countries ranked by their percent of multi-SIM usage. Now, in certain developing countries, multi-SIM is very popular. If you look at the countries on this list, most of them are in the developing world: Kenya, India, Bangladesh, and the usage, or the I should say that the usage indicates that it's a multi-SIM phone. Whether it's being used in a multi-SIM way, we actually don't know. But here we see that well over 80% of traffic comes from smartphones with a multi-SIM capability. And of the 50 countries that we studied, 14 of them had multi-SIM usage that was over 50%. Looking at the world's most populated countries as measured by smartphone subscribers. So we start with China, and go down India, United States, Brazil, moving down the line here. The largest country, China, has a 64% use of multi-SIM. India is even higher with 84%. In the United States, it's pretty rare that you have a phone here that is a multi-SIM device. Only 6%. And you can see as you go down the row here, some of the usage is all over the map. It's but I think you can see that developing countries tend to have more interest in this. Also, in the Europe, it used to be more of an issue where roaming fees were a big problem. Where you might have multi-SIM. Some of that has gone away, but it's still an indication that you're probably a business traveler if you're in a developed country and you have the multi-SIM capability in your phone. Some of the most popular multi-SIM smartphones as of the third quarter of 2018, we list them out here. The Galaxy S7 Edge is the most popular multi-SIM smartphone out there with 1.53% of all smartphone usage. Most of these are outside of that one, which is actually what I'd call a premium device. Most of these are budget phones. So the J7, the Huawei's, most of these are Huawei or they are all Samsung or Huawei devices, and most of them tend to be lower price phones. And looking actually at the price of the smartphone. So Wurfel, the device detection system that we use in Sentia Mobile markets, is one of the capabilities that we can tell instantly to a user is the manufactured suggested retail price, the MSRP of a smartphone. And what we've done here is correlated the MSRP and the multi-SIM capability. So on the left, you have the average price of all smartphones in 2015 and 2018. In 2015, the average price of all smartphones was $564, and that's increased slightly as time has gone on to $576. When you look at the multi-SIM devices, they tend to be devices that are less expensive. So in 2015, it was $243, and that's increased to $324 over the last 3 years. Now, the reason for that is that more and more higher-end devices are starting to include the multi-SIM functionality. So let's take a look at kind of breaking the price down to every $100 or deciles. The most popular segment for multi-SIM is the the $200 to $300 price range. That's accounts for 35.9% of all the multi-SIM smartphones. But you do see that there's more devices that are multi-SIMs that are you're seeing more and more the multi-SIM devices become more expensive. So the newly launched Apple iPhone XS and XS Max and XR have dual SIM slots. So as these expensive phones, these premium phones, come into usage, we're probably going to see the average MSRP increase over time in the next few months in particular. It's an interesting trend. Looking in our geographic spotlight, we took a look at Korea this month. So Korea is a very technologically advanced country. It's always been held up as probably one of the most advanced in terms of both the mobile network and the fixed network. So it's a relatively small country, but it really has amazing technology that covers most of it. And smartphones have been very popular for a long time in South Korea. And looking at some of the form factor breakdowns that we have, you see that the smartphones account for 53% of all browsing usage that we see from all the devices. And the desktops only account for 38%. Now, this is actually almost the flip of what you see in a country like the United States. 34% of browsing comes from smartphones in the United States, and a little over a half, 51%, comes from desktops. The remainder comes from feature phones, tablets, and what we're seeing is that the feature phones are actually pretty popular still in Korea. This is an interesting and somewhat puzzling because it's such a technologically advanced, but I think there's a use case for a feature phone that never really goes away. Having a simple phone that people can use to make calls and to browse on is quite attractive to certain markets, and we're seeing that here in Korea. Looking at the most popular smartphones in Korea, the Apple iPhone X is the most popular phone with 13.31%. So rewinding, I was talking about how with the blockbuster devices, you see fewer and fewer devices kind of breaking that 10% threshold. The iPhone X, which is actually the most expensive iPhone that was released in the last round, this is the most popular device. Very interesting. And you can compare this to the United States with just 7.6%. And moving on to the manufacturers, Apple just barely beats out Samsung as the most popular leading manufacturer of devices that are used in South Korea. Samsung is the next largest with 44.3%. LG is the next most popular. But it's really the fact that Apple is so popular is a bit of a surprise to me. Thinking here from the United States, I would think that the Korean phones, Samsung, might be leading, but it's pretty much a dead heat at this point. And tablets, this is pretty typical of a lot of countries. The Apple iPad is the dominant tablet around the world, and it's no different in Korea. The Apple iPad 2017 is the most popular tablet in Korea with 12.28% right now. And in terms of tablet manufacturers, yes, the Apple devices are leading with 61.81%, and Samsung has the second place, and everyone else is very far behind. In terms of the operating systems, we see that the Android is ahead in South Korea with 55.17%. iOS has 44.81%. And the most popular versions that we're looking at is on the Android side, we have the version 8 with 22.92%, which is significantly more than what we're seeing in the United States. So there's probably a faster upgrade path for a lot of the Android devices in South Korea. On the iOS side for Apple, we see that the version 11.4 is the most popular version, and it is also the most popular version during 2018 Q3 in the United States. And looking at the traffic on the mobile network operators by the hour of the day, so what we do is we track the traffic that we're seeing on the mobile network versus Wi-Fi. South Korea has a little bit higher usage of the mobile network throughout the day, although it switches. After in the morning, there's higher usage of the mobile network. During the day, perhaps when people are in the Wi-Fi range, they tend to use the mobile network less, and then it shifts back late at night to the mobile network. The United States, you see a little bit flatter trend. There is more mobile usage later in the evening. So that's Korea. Moving on to some of our standard reports, we compare the usage of the top smartphones. So in looking across all the different continents, what we do is we look at the top 10 devices and in each continent and 6 continents that are populated. And so theoretically, if there was no overlap, you could have 60 different phones. But the reality is that the top 10 in gets duplicated across a lot of different continents. So we only have, actually, I haven't counted it up, roughly 20 on this list today. New to this list is the Samsung Galaxy J7 Pro, and some devices have dropped off this list from last quarter. The Apple iPhone 5S has dropped off. I think we're seeing the tail end of users who are probably shifting up to new devices, perhaps a new iPhone. The iPhone 7 is the most popular device in the world when you look at it globally. You can see that its strengths are here in North America and Oceania. Europe is actually a pretty strong market there also. The iPhone X, one of the newer phones, is on this list also, and we're seeing particular strength in Asia for this device, and that was reflected in what we saw in South Korea, as we mentioned earlier. And you can see when you look at the change from quarter to quarter, you can see in green here the change on the iPhone X, big growth in Asia and North America. Some of the red that you see here shows that perhaps the iPhone 7 people are shifting up to a new device. As the new devices come out, we're starting to see some shift here. The iPhone 8 Plus has grown in popularity in North America and Oceania also. Actually, flipping back a little bit, you can see one of the ways that we measure fragmentation is looking at these top devices. What percent of the devices that are shown here, what percent do they account for versus the remainder of the rest of the long tail? In North America, it's a pretty concentrated market, actually. Approximately 59% of devices are represented in the top devices listed here, and only 41% is spread out amongst the long tail that follows. That's a little bit different in other countries where for example, in Asia, 58% of the market is taken by the long tail. So there's a lot more fragmentation in Asia. Looking at the operating systems, no huge change here. We've got the Android system with 66.4% of the market, and iOS with 32.96%. These tend to stay relatively constant. Looking over time, we'll see what's going on. What's happening is the interesting point here is that we really only have 2 operating systems that are out there. It used to be a day where there were 2 or 3. And looking at the individual versions, the most popular version across the world is the iOS 11.4 version. This is a little bit dated, and we'll get into this. This is the average for the third quarter. By the end of the third quarter, this 11.4 has been subsumed by a version 12, and we'll talk about that. The other interesting thing here is the growth of Android 8. It's now 14.14%. This is starting to become one of the more popular Android releases. Android has a huge issue around the fact that a lot of their users are on older versions. In fact, if you look at the Android legacy, which is everything before version 4.4, that still represents 14% of the market for Android. And looking at iOS in contrast, older legacy, which I believe is defined as anything before version 9, that's only 1.3%. So let's take a look at it. Yeah, the iOS 11.4 was kind of the most popular version. Actually, at the end of the quarter, it still was. But you're starting to see version 12 really start to ramp up with 35.59 by the end of September. And we anticipate that this picture will kind of continue to change as we move into the fourth quarter of 2018. And in contrast, here is the Android operating system. As you can see, version 8 in the green here has started to grow, but still it's a pretty different transition trend, and the legacy is pretty significant still. So that is the Mobile Overview Report webinar for 2018. If you're looking to learn more about how to get these sort of analytics in your system, please contact us. We've got things that we've got solutions that can handle the identify the iPhone and the iPad very easily and can integrate into your network. And we also have server-side detection that can give you the speed and the scale that you need. So let's take a look and see if there are questions. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and type them into your dashboard. I'll take a look. I'm not seeing any. All right. Well, if you are interested in more information, have suggestions for future reports for 2018 Q4 that's coming up, please contact us, and we will be putting out blogs and the actual Mover report very soon, probably on Friday. And we will be putting blogs out going into a little more detail about each of these in the following week. Jon Arne, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Ken, for having me.
Yes, and have a great rest of the day and weekend if I don't talk to you before then.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Cheers. Thank you, everyone.